For those who just join in, make sure you have a piece of paper and a pen or pencil, because we will go ahead and do a little bit of writing as we start at the beginning, and hopefully you would use that piece of paper to do more brainstorming after the seminar. And we will start right now. Okay, so welcome everyone. Go ahead. I'm going to show my face a little bit here. Hello. Hello, this is Mr. Chan. Many of you know me. And for those who are new to Forbidden Learning Commons, this is Mr. Chan, and I am a graduate of UT Austin. I taught for 10 years plus, actually. And in this seminar, I would like to go ahead and share what I know about writing college essays with you, just a little bit of my credentials so that you know where I'm coming from. I'm a math and science teacher, and when I was teaching at Clements, I taught primarily seniors for the last few years. I taught AP in environmental science. And during that time, I read quite a bit of college essays. I have students going to UT Austin, A&M, UH, Harvard, Princeton. So, and I can tell you what makes a good essay, what doesn't make it. And this is what I'm going to do today, to share with you what I know about college essay writing so that you can make the best use of time while school is out. I think this is the best time ever that you can really do your draft and not being distracted, except maybe Netflix or video games. But here you go, you have the time. So I'm gonna shut the video, and you can all see the screen on the computer screen. Okay, all right. So let's get started. I hope everyone's doing well, and please try to stay home. Make sure you clean your hands, wash your hands, and really don't go outside your house unless you have to. Try to stay put, and your effort, everyone's individual effort, will make a huge impact for the whole pandemic situation. So if you find this seminar very helpful, you're more than welcome to donate. I'm a small business owner, and during this time, my business is quite severely affected. So if you find this workshop helpful, donation, any amount helps. So I would thank you in advance. And this is actually an unpaid advertisement. The reason why it's unpaid is because it is actually owned by a former student of mine from Clements. They have the student owned a drone company, and they also started a restaurant. And I know getting meat out there could be difficult at times. So they have they have their own farm, and they produce their own beef. So if you want to get some yummy, tasty beef, you can get it from there. Okay, so before we start, I'm gonna ask you a couple questions, and hope you have your paper and your pencil or pen ready. So I'm gonna ask you a couple questions. So first, write down a few adjectives that can describe you. And I'm not gonna ask you to share, but I would like you to write a few adjectives. Okay, what adjectives can you use to describe yourself? Okay, I'll give you 1 minute to do that. And try to be genuine, try to be honest with all those adjectives. Who are you? Okay, all right, so let's go to the next question. If you need to pick one life story in your life to define who you are as a person, what would this story be? Okay, just try your very best. Try your very best to think about this question. And if you have one, go ahead, write it down. If you don't have one, it's fine. Okay, just try to think about your past for a moment. And we'll give you 1 minute to do that as well. Just think about how you will, is there any life story that you would like to share and how important that story is to you, to your values? Okay, take a moment and think about that. Okay, all right. So we will go ahead and get started. And you, hopefully, you wrote something down. If not, that's fine. And it's just a little reflection so that you know what status you are at. So don't feel bad if you have nothing much to write. We'll go ahead and create something to make it worthwhile. So just a little overview about application portals. Okay, so for those who might not have older siblings, you might not have heard much about application processes. So there are well, a few major ones, and I'm going to go through these ones very briefly because that's just some portals that you might need to consider. There's some essays you may need to consider, but the essay topics are quite similar. So for common apps, we have some in-state and out-of-state colleges and universities that go through the common app application. So the goal to select which portal to use, it's really about how to minimize your work. Okay, you don't want to use multiple platforms and you end up writing a ton of essays for every single one. So if they are using the same portal, chances are they may just need you to write one or maybe 3 essays and you can use them for all the colleges. So that's why we want to go through these application portals very briefly. There are other universities that would also take Common App. There are coalition for colleges for college. This is a pretty new one, and you can see there's an overlap of colleges, so you do have a choice, and it's just which one you find more comfortable. The application fees should be the same among the platforms because it's based on the college. And then you also have applied taxes. If you are going to go in-state, all universities and colleges in the state of Texas would accept applied taxes application. So, so let's go ahead and look at the essay prompts so that you have some exposure. I'm not sure if you have seen those prompts yet. So I want to make sure that I use this opportunity to go over the prompts with you and go over the general ideas with you. Now, there are a lot of words right here, and you can easily search up these topics by going to Google, just search Common App or Applied Texas 2020 or 2021 essay prompts, and you can see all these topics. Now, right here for number 1, as you can see, I have a little icon right there. That's popular. Now, by saying it's popular doesn't mean that you have to write that. It's just a lot of people are choosing it. So if you look at number 1, it's about your background, your identity. So something about yourself, okay? Topic number 2, it's about some kind of obstacle that will lead to your future success. So they want to know if you can write something about your struggles, your setbacks, your failures, and how do you look at it. Number 3, it's about whether you are being questioned to whether it's a belief or an idea that you're being challenged or questions, and they want you to write about it. Number 4, describe how you solve a problem. It could be an intellectual challenge, research query, or ethical dilemma. Okay, so I'm just going to go through these topics very briefly, and I will tell you what is going on with these topics in a moment. Okay. Number 5, it's a popular one. Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. Number 6, we have describe a topic, idea, or concepts that you find so engaging that that makes you lose all track of time. What does it captivate you? What or who you turn to when you want to learn more? Share an essay of any topic of your choice. It can be one you have already written, one that responds to a different prompt, or one of your own design. So these are the upcoming topics for the common application. So a bunch of you here are juniors, so these prompts will be very useful for sophomores and and freshmen here. Well, it's great that you are here. The topics are usually the same year after year. They may have some modification of wording, but the ideas are pretty much the same thing. So you can take a look at these essay topics and give yourself a challenge to write these essays, even though your application may be 1 or 2 years away from right now. And for applied Texas, it's a lot simpler. It's just 3 essays. Tell us your story. What unique opportunities or challenges have you experienced throughout your high school career that have shaped who you are today? Topic B, most students have an identity, an interest, and talent that defines them in an essential way. Tell us about yourself. And topic C, you've got a ticket in your hand. Where would you go? What would you do? And what would happen when you get there? Okay, so there are some key advices here when you look at these topics all together. A common theme that I hope you can just listen it out from these topics is that it's all about yourself. One common advice that we teachers or counselors give to students is that, can you tell a story? Can you tell a story that reflects who you are? Can you tell a story that it's not being described by your resume? This is not being described by your teacher's recommendation letters. It's not being described by your transcript, because they want to look at who they are admitting to their universities and colleges. Now, and this is where I want to make sure that we all have a correct, appropriate point of view and perspective to look at college application. Because in my years as a teacher, I hear students talking about, oh, I want to go to this college. I want to go to University of Austin, University of Texas at Austin. I want to go to Texas A&M. I want to go to Harvard or whatever. And the one thing that I keep not hearing, though, is that they are not talking about why they should take you as a student. Okay. Like, it's great that you have set yourself a high expectation of where you want to go, but meanwhile, are you actually asking the question that why should they take you as a student? And this is a very important question to ask, because this question, it's going to be, or this philosophy, it's going to be applicable to you for the rest of your life. Because after college graduation, you are going to find a job. You may say, I want to work for Facebook. I want to work for Google. I want to work for some biotech company or oil and gas company. Okay, that's fine. It's great that you set great high standards for yourself. But then, why should they take you? Are you giving them a reason to take you into the companies? And right now, the question would be, what is the reason that you are giving them to take you as their student? Okay, do you have a valid justification to convince them that you are worthwhile to be taken? So I want to make sure that we don't overlook some key questions here. Your perspective, it's very, very important. If you did not ask the question of why they should take you, then I would tell you that the chance it's slim because you don't even know why you're going there. Okay, so that's the general idea of all these essay prompts. So it's about yourself that's not being reflected from other sources. That's number one. Number two, what they really want to see is how good you are in terms of your understanding of yourself. Like, do you know about your life? Do you know about your own sets of values? Okay. If you don't know your own values, if you don't know who you are, then they don't know who you are. And they will not be comfortable in taking you as a student. So that's why when you look at all these topics, okay, you talk about challenges, setbacks, failures. Like these are all common things. And I want to share with you one example that I have read in the past. It's an essay from a Clemens student. He was one of the top ranked students, and he was writing about a failure. And after I read the essay, I almost want to rip his essay apart. The reason was the topic, well, about failure, right? So the failure he was addressing was about how he kept getting second or third places in competitions. So he looked into his practices and he realized that the problem was he was not managing his time well. So he came up with a solution, and that was setting a schedule, and then he followed his schedule, and therefore it got better. Now, why would I want to rip his essay apart? Because as a top ranked Clemens student or any school student, I expect some maturity. And I was like, come on, there must be some deeper reasons than not managing time well that would lead to those failures. Okay, of course, you would say, well, how would he consider those as failure? He's getting second or third places. Well, failure is a subjective word, so you can define whatever you want to define. Okay, you can say getting a 99 is a failure. You can say getting an 85 is a failure. So it's really up to you. But it's like, what it's your perspective, and they want to make sure that the students that are taking they are mature, they are thoughtful, and they are somewhat philosophical. Okay, and now we're not trying to say that you have to be a little bit more fancy when you try to write your essay, but it is very important that you give these topics a deeper thought and to identify some real issues right here so that you make a fundamental difference, okay, in your life or in other people's life. So again, try to reflect who you are and try to reflect your values as you are writing your essays. And from here, I'm going to go over the steps of starting starting your essay writing. So the step number one is to create. Oh, sorry, my bad. I inserted a word right here. So create a structured outline. Okay, the keyword right here is structured. What I realize about many students is that they are not they did not write an outline before they start writing. And I have no idea why they would do that because I don't think this is the teaching in English class. So having an outline is crucially important. So you want to spend like at least 50% of the time for the whole essay writing process just for the outline. Because if the outline doesn't fly, your essay will not fly. So this is crucial. This is a very, very crucial step. So in order to make this first step a little bit easier to understand, I want you to think about yourself playing three different roles. So the first role is, of course, you're a writer. Okay, you're about to write a great or multiple great essays. So you need to think about, all right, how are you behaving as a writer? Are you using the words that you're supposed to use? Are you using the language properly? Are you making it formal, or are you making the logic to flow smoothly? Okay, and many students who did not write an outline, their writing, it's all over the places. What I have seen so far, I have students writing essays. They would put a heavy emphasis on some trivial stuff. And when it was about the core value, they would just spend like 1 or 2 sentences to talk about it. I'm like, what's going on here? That's weird. Okay, so the role number one is you are being a writer. And role number two is that you are being a director. Okay, a director. You are directing a movie almost. Okay, your essays are going to be like a movie. You're going to tell people about the essay you're writing, and people are just going to enjoy what you are describing without reading the essay. Can you construct an outline that it's almost like a good script for an Oscar movie? Okay, so you have to think about what is the most crucial component in the essay, and how are you going to arrange this, how are you going to arrange this flow of events, and on which part you're going to amplify it, you're going to describe the details. Okay, so that's very important. Role number three is that you are going to be an engineer. Okay, now what does it mean by engineer? You may not be majoring in engineering, but I want you to give you an idea of what it's like to be an engineer. Engineers' major job is to build machines. Okay, anything that's redundant, they chop it off. Okay, they weed them off, because if it's redundant, don't do that, because there is a limitation of space. And as you write your essays, you will see the word limitations, maybe like 500 words or even 150 words. Okay, so you got to think about what is the most important part, the most functional part of your essay that you are going to stress on, and how some unimportant part of the information can just be skipped. Okay, and one thing that I would always suggest students to think about this is, if you take away one paragraph that you think is very important, would it affect your whole meaning? If your answer is, well, I think it's okay to not include that paragraph, then that paragraph is unnecessary. You're wasting your words. You're not contributing to the function of the essay. You are building a vehicle that delivers your values, your image, your own brand. So you need to think about yourself as an engineer. You are going to take off all the unnecessary parts that does not contribute to the big goal, which is to show who you are. So you have 3 roles to play. Again, you are a writer, you are a director, and you are an engineer as you write this essay. And I will go through these more in details in the following slides. So what are the requirements of a good outline? Okay, so since I said it's very important, it's very it will be very helpful to be more specific on what constitutes a good outline. A good outline. So you would have to display a good, smooth flow of thoughts. Okay, there are justifications on why you want to include all these thoughts into your essays. Okay. The outline should be in complete sentences. Now, you may not have done outlines in complete sentences. You may think about just bullet points with some words, and that should be fine, right? So I want you to know that no, it's not okay. I want you to be as complete as possible, because this is the moment that you want to give yourself an idea. You are taking notes for yourself on how to structure your essay. Why are you writing these words? Okay, again, you are a director, you are an engineer, you are a writer. So every single bullet point must be supported with some sound justification. And the way to do it, use complete sentences so that you can keep track of all your thoughts. And it is okay that your outline is longer than the essay itself, because the more description you have at the beginning, the easier task that you will have afterwards. And if you have one section, okay, if you have one section, there should be more than one bullet point. Okay, there should not be just one single bullet point for a section. That's like, what is the point of your section? Okay, so make sure you organize your essay really, really carefully so that you are able to think about what are the key ingredients that you must include in this little section. Okay, and we are not talking about, like, yeah, well, I mean, yes, we're talking about introduction, body, and conclusion. But as you look into each of these sections, what are the points? Okay, like when you think about your introduction, what are the points that you want to bring out? How come, what, like, why do you think that these bullet points would capture the reader, the audience of your essay? Why is it essential that you must bring in these points in your essay? So that's something you want to take care of. And you can justify yourself when asked, why do you write it this way? Now, if I review my students' essay, I would challenge them every way possible, because sometimes I may not know the reason. Sometimes I just want to know if they know the reason. So if you cannot ask, if you don't ask this question, somebody will. And if nobody will ask you this question, then the chance of you having a good college essay, it's kind of slim. Okay, so make sure you're being harsh to yourself. Try to criticize yourself as much as possible. Be very critical. Ask yourself, why do you write it this way? Like, what is your argument to say, all right, I'm going to write this essay this way. I want to talk about this failure. I want to mention about this incident first because of blah, blah, blah. Okay, there's a reason why you want to structure your essay this way. Okay, and you are in good position to defend yourself in writing your essay in this particular way. And now, this is the most important part. A lot of students, they don't realize it, but this is actually the most important part. You need to allocate a word limit for each section of your essay. Now, for example, that we have a 600 word limit, okay? And we have intro, we have body, and we have the conclusion. So I'm just going to give you an example. So let's just say we have the intro, and let's just say we have a good 25% of the essay. 25% of the essay would be dedicated for the introduction. And then let's say we have a good 55% of the essay for the body. And that leaves us with 20% of the essay for the conclusion. So then you look at these percentages and you do your math. You're like, okay, so what is 25% of 600? So you do 600 times 0.25. So that is equivalent to 150 words, meaning that you will only have 150 words for your essay, for your introduction section. And if you look at the average length of a sentence, we're talking about 10 to 12 words per sentence. So you have about 15 sentences. How are you going to structure these 15 sentences for your essay? And this is the engineering part of your essay writing process. Okay, not many people are aware of this step. And what would happen when they are not aware of this particular step is that they would miss out the proportion of the essay. They would have a very lean introduction and very lean conclusion, and they would write a whole ton on the body. And when there's not an attractive introduction, there's not a good justification to the body, then the essay's quality, it's not as good as you want it to be. And if you look at the 150 words, you're going to write about 13 to 15 sentences. And from there, you're like, okay, what am I going to write with 13 to 15 sentences? Now, it's going to be challenging, I would tell you, okay? Because usually you don't think about it that way, but you are going to think about it now. So you will think about what to include, how you're going to lead the reader into your main point. Okay, so again, always remember what roles you're playing. You're a writer, you're a director, and you're an engineer. And you do the same process for the other parts. So you would have 330 words for the body and 120 words for the conclusion. Usually what I see in students' essay, the common weakness is that they have a very weak introduction and conclusion. There is no insight in the conclusion. There is no attractiveness in the introduction. So by giving you this perspective, okay, separate your essay based on percentages, allocate your words, then you are going to have a very solid footing before you start writing. Okay, so I want you to make sure that you're well aware of this process. Number two, it must be a genuine story. Never fake a story to impress. It would not work. The reason I'm saying this is because some students, they may think about, all right, I want to impress these universities and colleges. I'm going to create a story that actually did not happen. And now, what's the problem with that? Well, first, it's academic dishonesty, number one. Number two, you cannot fake a feeling that you have never faced or experienced before. For example, okay, a little bit of my experience. I will tell you a story, true story. I had a car accident back in 2010 on I-10 on my way to Austin, Texas from Sugar Land. And there was a truck next to me. And I thought the truck was going to lean to my lane, and I freaked out. I turned my wheel and I lost control. My car spun around on I-10 for 3 rounds, and then it skid to the side of the road. It had a very slow, almost like Six Flag, that kind of ride. It's a very slow rollover, but it was a 360 rollover. I didn't die. That's why I can stand here, do this webcast with you. I walked off of my car, looked at the car. I was stunned, and I asked myself, why didn't I die? And the moment right after I asked the question, I was still all over the places. But my mind gave me an answer. I didn't die because I have a mission. I have a mission to teach. I have a mission to educate. And from then on, I have a perception in my mind that if I don't do my very best job to teach my students, my life would be taken away from me. Now, it was a very genuine story, and that was my life principle throughout my adult life ever since the car accident. And you cannot fake a feeling, because if you never experienced that feeling, there is no way that you can describe that the details of that incident. Like if you did not experience a near-death moment, how would you write about the near-death moment? Like the words will not come out right. The feelings won't be right. And it would sound very weird. So this is why I urge everyone to write a genuine story. Now, it may not be a big story. It's okay. But it must be a genuine story that reflects who you are, that reflects your values. Okay, so don't fake a story. Okay, a huge no-no. Number 3, use proper language. This is not as much of a major problem, but it is a problem nonetheless, because I see students writing essays, they are using somewhat informal language as they write the essays. And I'm like, really? This is an essay. Like it's a literary work. Okay, so you are going to publish the essay. Like think about it this way. You're going to publish this essay. Like why would you not use the proper language? Why would you use slang? Why would you use some very average words when you can use better, when your vocabularies allowed you to write something better? Now, do you have to use all fancy vocabularies? You don't. The logic in the essay, it's way more important than your vocabularies. But if you can use better vocabularies, if the vocabularies can help you to help you capture the essence of your story, use them. Okay, but don't overuse them, because like we all read thousands of essays. We know what they are like. And so if you are trying to go over the top and without you being capable to go over the top, we can smell it. So use proper language, okay? So what constitutes proper language? Okay, so if you use acronym, make sure that you use make sure you use the full name first, and then use a parentheses to do the acronym, because sometimes we don't know what the acronyms are for. Like, you know it, but I don't. Okay, for example, if you write about Model UN, let's just say you are a member of Model UN, and you never mention the word Model UN, you just say MUN, and I would be like, what is MUN? I have no idea what Hmong is. Now, you may talk about a huge experience about your Hmong participation, but we have no idea what it is because we never knew what Hmong is. Okay, so you have to state, oh, Model UN, parentheses, MUN. Then you can use the shorthand from here and on out. Okay, so use correct diction. Make sure you're writing an essay. Be more serious. Use vocabularies responsibly, okay? Make sure you know how to use them. Don't overuse them, as I said earlier. Okay, stay positive. Don't whine. Nobody likes a pessimistic person, and definitely not your college. For example, let's just say you are going to write about this pandemic on your essay, which is a great thing to write. You may write about Hurricane Harvey, which is a great thing to write, but stay positive. Like, we are going through a very difficult time as a nation, okay? Back in Harvey time, we were experiencing a huge difficulty, a huge struggle as a city. Well, what are the positives that you can see? Okay, talk about the positives. Okay, we all know about the negatives, but not many people can see the positive. And as I always tell my students in environmental science, there are always two sides of a coin. So do you see the two sides? What makes you an extraordinary person is that you are able to see the two sides of the same incident. So this is where I would like to introduce my law, quote unquote, law of inequality. So good doesn't mean it is happy, okay? And sad doesn't mean it is bad, okay? So are you able to see are you able to see the good thing from a sad event? Okay, for example, if you say you want to be a doctor, and this is the best time to see what a doctor does. Okay, in this huge crisis, we are hearing stories about doctors working long hours. They don't have enough supplies. And what's your view about it? Okay, you can talk about it. So don't think about the happy things are always a good thing. Can you see the negative or possible negatives from a happy event? For example, you didn't study much for a test. Somehow you get an A. Well, does that teach you a lesson? Because most people wouldn't get that lesson. Okay, they would just think about, oh, I'm so lucky, I got an A even without much studying. But that itself could teach you a lesson that, yeah, sometimes luck could be in your favor, but you are different because you realize that how lucky you are, and luck may not always be on your side. So the best way to stay on top of things is to be prepared. So although you get an A from inadequate preparation, hey, you are not going to use that as a go-to guide to not prepare at all in the future. It is actually a rare reminder that most people will not see, and you see it and you say, oh, even though I got an A from inadequate preparation, but from now on and from that point and on, I actually become super prepared. Okay, and I tell students that as a teacher, I learn things from students, and I learn a lot from Clement students. I learned that the best way to prepare life is to be over-prepared. And the reason is there is not a line to tell you that, oh, you are just prepared. You can't tell. So that means you are either over-prepared or under-prepared. Well, then choose one, because you are going to fall into one of these two categories. So then I learned how to be always over-prepared so that I am able to achieve what I want to achieve. So that's just some of my life story that if you are interested, you can ask me later on. All right, so some common concerns in writing these essays. First one is that I don't know how to start. I don't have a story to tell. So that was the reason why I asked you to write something at the very beginning of the seminar. Now, if you don't have a story to tell, I can tell you a good news. You have time. You are watching this webinar right now, and from like between now and the time you really have to write your essays, there's still a couple months. Use the time wisely to create a story that would define who you are. You can talk about, well, the school closure was unprecedented. It is unexpected, but I choose to use this time to do blank, whatever things you want to do. Let's just say you want to learn how to program. It's something that you have been thinking about to do since whenever, and you are always busy, and you didn't do it. And hey, you get all the time you want. Maybe you can use the time to do it. Maybe you want to make a website to raise awareness. Do it now. So if you don't have a story to tell, don't panic. Do something now and don't waste the time, because time is precious. You have all the power and creativity to make the materials, the ingredients that you want to have on your essays. This is the best time. Okay. Should I use a quote in my essay? When I read a lot of my students' essay, I guess the English teacher told them to use a quote. It's not necessary. Number one, it's not necessary. Number two, if you want to use a quote, make sure that this particular quote this quote must have a deep impact that you are able to elaborate. And you are able to reflect how this quote itself, a short quote that has a huge impact in your life. So I want to let you know that just quoting somebody famous, using a quote, a famous quote, it's not going to enhance the quality of your essay. It won't. What will? How do you use the quote? Do you have leverage? Okay, to use the quotes to elevate the quality of your essay. All right, so this is very important. Now, for example, I would give you an example here. A quote that that personally affected me a lot is from Steve Jobs. Now, I don't know I'm not able to quote the wording verbatim, but it's like this. It was from a commercial back then. It's about if you search the crazy ones on Google, it pops out. People who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that will change the world, something like that. Now, I believe in this quote because for one, I'm not going to say I changed the world, but there are things that I have never thought that I would be able to do. And this quote changed me to be, for example, to be a presenter in a national conference when I was a second-year teacher. Most second-year teachers won't go out and present. They might be a participant, but they're not a presenter. And the reason I thought I could present, I just believed that I could present because I have something to share. I learned to share, okay? I learned my stuff in order to share to my fellow teachers. So that quote in itself had made a huge impact on my life, on my professional life. And if I have to write an essay, I will use that because I have tons to share. So make sure that if you are considering using a quote, ask yourself, was there a quote that has already made an impact? If not, forget about it. It's not going to be very useful anyways. Can I talk about my religious belief? That depends on what school you're applying to. If you are applying some faith-based universities, you're okay to talk about religious belief. If you are applying some state schools or religiously neutral school, I would say be very careful. I'm not going to say no, but be very careful because you need to consider who the reader is, because they want to know who you are, not what the religion is. They want to know who you are. They want to know what your values are. So can you talk about religion? It's an open question, but be very careful, okay? You may want to think about other topics before talking about religion, okay? The same is true for politics. Religion and politics, they are, because it's very subjective. So if the reader, if the officer who is reading your essay, they agree with you, great. If they don't, well, you don't get accepted. So that's my advice, okay? That's my personal advice. Uh, be aware of who you're writing it to. So make sure you know you are focusing yourself still, even though you may use your religion as a vehicle to bring out your values, but be very careful, okay? Be very, very careful. Should I be conservative or take some risk with my imagination? Okay, now, this is also a pretty subjective question. Colleges, they love students to take certain degree of risk, because if you don't take risk, then you don't really learn. Okay, so one thing about being an entrepreneur is that you need to assess your risk and you have to take risk. If you become too conservative, then you may have a little difficulty in writing your essay because your essay might be too average. So when you think about your essay, you might want to think about what kind of risk you want to take. For example, in the applied Texas, um, prompt, I think it's the topic C. If you have a take it, where would you go? Okay. Now, in itself, it's very subjective. You can talk about a location that is actually a real location. You may talk about a location that's totally imaginative. Okay, so does it matter? Well, it depends on what you're going to write. I cannot tell you whether it's a good idea or a bad idea if you think of an imaginative place to write about. It all depends on the context. So feel free to take some risk in your imagination, and especially if you are trying some schools that you know it's not going to be a big shot. It's not going to be very easy to get in, then I would say, what holds you back? Why not take some risk? Because being conservative is not going to make you get into school anyways. Like if you say, I want to, like your GPA may not be as stellar as it could be, but you really want to go to a certain university, then hey, reflect your own views, take some risk. I'm not talking about being unreasonable with the risks. I'm talking about go ahead, step outside your comfort zone a little bit, talk about some topics that you might not write about in for your safety schools, and try it. Why not? Okay. And how much of my past can I talk about? Try to stay maybe recent, but if you say, well, there's something happened in my early childhood that changed my life, well, sure, talk about it, okay? But make sure you are very focused on that event, okay? The common problem is that students are writing their essays and it is all over the places, and that becomes a huge distraction. The students are not really sure what they want to point out from the essay. So you want to stay focused on a particular topic. So if it's something back in your childhood, you experienced something, go ahead, write it. Okay, use it to your advantage. So you can talk a lot about your past as long as it is really a good reflection or a good factor that leads to your character, for the formation, the shaping of your character, your values, your life goals. Okay, so feel free to talk about them. Is my essay too cliche? Okay, don't worry about it. Just stay true to yourself. There would always be cliche, and it's not about the whatever that. Well, what makes the wording cliche? It's not the words itself. It's how you are using it. So if I say I love my job, okay, I love being a teacher. Well, is that a cliche? Well, some people may consider it. But hey, that's my true value. Like without educating students, I would die. Like, like I cannot accept myself sitting idle at home. So I would love to use this opportunity to share my advices on writing college essay to you all. So that is a reflection of who I am as a teacher. Well, so I say I love teaching. Well, in that case, I wouldn't say it's a cliche because I got things to support my words. So don't worry about you writing cliche, just stay genuine. If you think you need to say it, just go ahead and say it. Okay? I don't have a perfect idea yet. I will write my first draft later. This is a huge, huge no. Okay? Don't do that. Okay? You will write my first draft now. Now, you may say, but Mr. Chan, I don't know what I'm going to write. Well, write it. Okay? Go ahead, write it. Because you need something to based upon. You need to improve based on something. So you are going to create that ugly something so that you will have a clear direction on what to improve. Now, my own experience in writing a admission essay was the moment I applied to my master program at UT Austin. I wrote my first essay, my first draft. I answered all the questions and I tore my essay apart, literally, into pieces. Because after I wrote it, I was like, this is super boring. I would not take myself into the program if I'm the admission officer or if I'm the professor. Like I answer all the questions, but it was just super boring. So I'm like, no, I need to restructure my essay. So go ahead, maybe use this weekend or next week to write your first draft. Yes, it is not perfect, and it is exactly the idea. It doesn't have to be perfect. It is just a tool to serve you, to help you know what direction you are going to take on. You have a better compare and contrast. The worst thing that it could happen is that you just write it bad. But if you don't write it, let me tell you what kind of bad consequences would happen if you choose not to write it. Okay. If you don't write it because you think like, I don't have the best idea yet, I'm going to brainstorm a little bit more. You're going to waste all the time you have, and you will still not have a good draft when you happen to write it in the future. So don't waste your time. Okay. If you are a junior, go ahead, start writing your first draft in this weekend or sometime next week, or just do it this weekend. Okay. Just do it. Pick a few essays, pick your colleges that you want to apply to, write a topic, give yourself some baseline, and then critique yourself so that you know what to improve, what direction you're going to take. Okay. So should I read some sample essays before I start writing? Now, I do not recommend that. Okay. I recommend you reading some sample essays after you write your first draft, but not before you write your first draft. And I have reasons to support my claim. The reason is that it's about our memory. Our memory, it's pretty stubborn. Once you read some great Ivy League accepted essays, then your brain is going to tell you that, all right, you're going to write like that, just like that. Okay. You are not going to go any other route than that particular route. Okay. So when you read these sample essays beforehand, then you are limiting your own creativity. And that's bad because you now have a little box to trap you on what you should write in the future. Okay, so that's the reason why I do not suggest reading sample essays before you write your first draft. Now, after you write your first draft, then you're like, oh, I can see the difference. And now you can give some very specific critiques on your first draft, and you think about how to modify it, how to improve it. And you are going to be like an engineer to make your essay more efficient, to optimize your essay as like a machine. And that's how you write a much better essay afterwards. So I want you to understand why I'm not recommending anyone to read sample essays right now before you write your first draft. Do it afterwards. Okay. What can I do now to prepare myself? Well, here are some bullet points to help you start your process. And these are the last 2 slides. Okay. First, observe your life carefully and reflect frequently. That's very important. When we talk about writing essays, writing stories to reflect your own values, to reflect who you are, it's about your inner thoughts. What are the inner thoughts? Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, for the universities and colleges you want to apply to, make sure that you read their mission statements. Okay, it's just like when you apply to a company for a job, you go ahead and read the history and read what they do as a company. Because if you don't know where you're going to, then they are not going to take you. Like for example, UT Austin, the mission statement, what starts here changes the world. Okay. Like for those who are thinking about going to UT Austin, like, do you know this slogan? If you don't, well, now you do. And it's important that you do because this is what we do as Texas Longhorns. Okay, I'm a proud graduate of UT Austin, and this is something that I try to do every single day. What starts here changes the world. I try to educate my students so that they may have a huge impact in this to the society in the future. Do you know their mission statements? Because if you know their mission statements, and if you happen to have similar values that align with their mission statements, I would tell you that your chance of getting admitted just got higher. Because if you are genuinely holding those true values, well, then we are on the same page. Okay, you come to my university and we can work things together. We can make this society a better society. So make sure you spend some time to browse the websites of the universities and colleges that you are applying to. Know who they are. Know who you are. Okay. Create genuine experience that is beneficial for your essay, for your major, and for your life. Okay, as I said earlier, you don't have school for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or possibly for the rest of the semester. Well, do something. Don't just sit at home and Netflix. Do something, learn something, and try to use this as a thought-provoking, inspiring story that you can tell people that, hey, you know, back then when there was a pandemic, we didn't have any school, I learned how to do programming, and now because of that opportunity, I am using my programming skill to do some marvelous job or some world-changing projects. Well, do that. Okay, your imagination is your limit, and the biggest struggle of all the plans, it's executing the plan, starting the actions. Okay, set a timeline for yourself. Okay, so now I know this is a difficult time. You may not know when school will resume. Like, do we even have school at the beginning of next school year? No one knows. But you are going to set timeline as if you will have all those deadlines and all those college application deadlines, let's say November 1st. If you're thinking about early admission, maybe October 1st. So what is your timeline? Now, the timeline that I would suggest students to have is that by late May, you should have your first drafts ready. Now, well, actually not first drafts, your almost completed drafts, okay? Like close to the finished product. So maybe your third draft by late May. And since that would be the case when you have school. So since you don't have school, you can kind of shift the timeline earlier. So let's just say by late April, you should have your good drafts ready. And then from May to June, you are improving, optimizing, kind of decorate your essays to be the perfect essay in your mind. And then you're ready to go. You're ready to submit your application by August. Okay. And by the way, I always suggest students to submit application before the beginning of the school year. Now, many universities, they open their application portal on August 1st. Some are even earlier. I think Texas A&M, they have their admission portal open up in June or July. So make sure you go ahead, take a look at those admission related information so that you can do this as early as possible. And yes, sometimes if you apply early, you do get accepted early and you have less time, but you have much smaller amount of time to stress about admission afterwards. Don't wait until the deadline to submit your application. Experiment with your preferred topics. The earlier you write your first draft, the sooner you would know how to improve. So you may not know, like for Common Apps, there are 7 choices and you might have to write only 3. So use the time, try it out, okay? Spend 1 or 2 hours to write an essay. See how satisfied you are. See if you can picture a better version of your essay. If you could, stick with it. If not, drop it, pick another one. Experiment. You have all the time to experiment right now, do that, okay? Read some biographies, nonfictions, learn. This is a time to learn. If you think that I don't really have much to share, learn right now so that you have more to share, okay? Plan for some college tours, definitely not now. So you may wanna go online to see if there's any kind of virtual tours on their websites. It is pretty important that you know the departments that you are applying to. It's very important that you know the majors, the course offerings. So try to come up with questions so that when the pandemic subsides, you schedule your college tours, and you have some questions to ask when you actually do the tours. Okay, so I guess we are right on time. If you have any question, you can type it. I will tell you what my plan is for the near future. Next week, I will have another webinar on picking college majors. Okay, so you might not know, or you may have an idea what your college major would be, but you're not sure. Well, this would be a good time to go through those questions on college majors, and I will tell you some tips on how to identify and how to do your limits test on whether the major fits you or not. Okay, so if you have any question, please, you can email me. Okay, you receive an email from me, so you know my email address. So yeah, feel free to email me your questions, and I hope you stay home, stay healthy, and wish you all the best. You don't get the virus, so it will be over soon, but we just have to stay put and wait it out at our home. Okay, so start writing your essay, start your first draft, and for sophomores and freshmen, hey, do that too. Okay, it doesn't hurt if you start early. It only hurts if you start too late. So do that, and make sure you think about who you are, what your values are, and do your very best to reflect it. So thank you for being here. And if you have any questions, again, email me. If you have any comments, email me. And I would love to hear your feedbacks and your questions. Okay, so hope I will see you next week. Okay, so I will see you later. Goodbye.